Welcome to Conversations with Cannex. My name is Tamiko Toland, and today I'm here with John Faustino. And John, I would appreciate if you could, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company.
Thank you, Tamiko. I am the head of Broadridge Fi360 Solutions. Fi360 was acquired by Broadridge a little bit more than 2 years ago. And Fi360 is a company that trains advisors on how to be fiduciaries. We have a prominent designation, the AIF, that we offer. We also have software and data and analytics that we make available to advisors and their home offices and asset managers, primarily around retirement plan, investment selection, and due diligence, but also foundation and endowment and wealth account as well.
Great, thanks so much. So as a matter of full disclosure, I should reveal that we are working together on the Lifetime Income Consortium. So we're really gearing up right now, particularly for 2022, to create and share a validated framework to assess lifetime income solutions for the purpose of placing them within retirement plans. Now, going off of your intro, this seems like a real departure for Fi360, but you've made a big commitment to this space. So I just would appreciate if you could share why this is so important to your business.
Yeah, I feel that there's a real market need for lifetime income options to be included within retirement plans. If you look at the Department of Labor's recently stated goals for 2022, more access to lifetime income within 401k plans was one of the top items that was noted. And there's a few factors that are driving this need. You've got less defined benefit plans than there have been before. There's less benefits that folks are getting from Social Security on an inflation adjusted basis than they were 20 years ago. And then you've got people living longer as well too. So, fundamentally for me, there's a real market need for participants to have some more guaranteed sources of income. And my interest in the consortium and partnering with you and Michelle Richter at Fiduciary Insurance is really around the fact that the industry as itself, it seems like they haven't been able to accelerate the usage to the levels that the demand warrants. So it's not so much of a departure from my perspective. We're really focused on identifying friction points for advisors and product manufacturers to help them better serve end investors. And I think this consortium is a great way to do that.
Yeah, so as you just pointed out, the concept of income within DC has really been around for a while, but we've seen pretty, call it sluggish adoption. And so, we've been hoping that this would kind of catch fire like maybe a decade ago, right? So, but what has changed in DC now to make this the right time, for the consortium to come together?
So I think there's a few things, and the thing that I'll put at the top of the list is the Secure Act. So the Secure Act is making it easier for annuities, guaranteed income offerings to be included within 401k plans. And as I mentioned, the Department of Labor and regulators, they're explicitly focused on increasing access to lifetime income offerings. So I think anytime you've got the regulators kind of as a tailwind behind that, that's a positive. And I guess a couple other things that make it the right time for a consortium from my perspective is that when we did the outreach to product providers, both insurers and also asset managers, on this concept of working together to evangelize and facilitate the uptake here, there was so much like-mindedness in terms of recognition of the market need, the need to help end participants, and a like-mindedness in collaborating in a manner to just help the industry in general. So I felt that maybe early on, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there were a lot of firms that thought they could go it alone, and the uniqueness of their offering would be a great differentiator, and they'd be able to gather a lot of assets. that did not happen. So I think there's a recognition and maybe some learnings from those past experiences that collaborating with peers will hopefully create a rising tide that'll lift all ships.
I think you make a really great point there when it comes to, I mean, I'll just call it like the failure of these solutions to really significantly catch on, and particularly for a single product manufacturer. We see this a lot with sort of newer products, that they're very slow to catch on, and it really greatly helps to have multiple different players out there telling a similar story. Now, obviously, there are differences among different solutions, and that's part of what we're looking to help people understand. But the basic value proposition and the reasons that sponsors should look at adding these solutions, that's going to be, generally speaking, consistent among all the product manufacturers.
Yeah, so I agree. I think a consistent framework is important, and it's also really important to have standardized data that advisors can use for selection and for ongoing monitoring. And that's where I'm excited to be partnering with you and to be partnering with Cannex on this. A lot of the feedback that we got from advisors with some of those offerings that came out, it's like, well, this is very interesting, but what do I benchmark it against? How do I get data to evaluate it, not only for the initial selection, but for the ongoing monitoring? So there are definitely a lot of fiduciary concerns that are driven by the lack of a standardized framework, and also standardized data for that ongoing due diligence and monitoring. So that is something that's really critical for these options to be used kind of as simply and easily as mutual funds and CITs are today.
Yeah, although I say I don't think it'll ever be quite as simple, because it's a much more complex problem. And the reason I say this is because Cannex, like, we live and breathe income valuation. Like, these kinds of analytics are really core to our business. But it's a very different proposition looking at an individual client case versus the population of workers at a particular company, and considering that range of needs. There's no single number that you can spit out, because it's a much more dynamic situation. So this is actually one of the important reasons why we really wanted to partner with other folks, because we didn't want to be working on this independently, particularly not fully informed about, say, the next step from the due diligence standpoint of how does the data interact with an overall framework that integrates both those qualitative components as well as quantitative components. So yeah, we can feed that part, but we need to know what to kick out. So it's a very beneficial partnership, I think, for all of us, bringing something very different to the table.
And I agree with you that it is definitely, it's a more nuanced, more sophisticated discussion. It absolutely will be in the next several years relative to the selection of a mutual fund or a CIT for a plan. So the standardization that we're going to get with the framework and with some common data representations is going to help, but there is an additional level of sophistication if you're including lifetime income in a plan, for sure. And that's something that I think certainly has some challenges associated with it, but it also provides opportunities for advisors to differentiate themselves from a plan design standpoint, and to show plan sponsors how they can better address the needs of the underlying participants. And what we've seen in the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen advisors become much more active in plan placement and the like than they were before. We're seeing more than 70% of plans being placed by advisors. So they're really taking kind of that role at the center of the plan implementation discussions, more so than they have in the past. And we're seeing advisors kind of move away from that broker of record status, acting as a 321, acting as a 338 a lot more often, and winning business from those that are less sophisticated. So I think this is another opportunity for those advisors that really want to deliver more value to win more business and be compensated for it.
So that you're pointing to yet another change that's really not particularly linked to the income question, but it definitely has some implications for it. So, we know also from the retail market already that there, for most advisors and I'd say also for consultants in the DC space, the guaranteed income is really kind of not a concept that they're that familiar with. And so there's a huge gap that they are going to need to cross in order to get comfortable with it and how to actually use it. So, how do you think that the consortium addresses this issue specifically? So two-part question. And then what else do you think needs to happen?
So I guess I see the consortium addressing the hurdles and the challenges just with acceptance of guaranteed income, and people like it when you talk about it as guaranteed income. When you talk about annuities specifically, there's still a lot of negative connotations there. In addition to developing a due diligence methodology to help advisors select and monitor lifetime income options, we're going to host a handful of webinars to educate advisors, consultants, and some of those webinars are going to be applicable to plan sponsors as well too, to get them hopefully more comfortable with the concept of guaranteed income, with the concept of annuities, understanding that that vehicle in and of itself is not necessarily a bad vehicle. It needs to be evaluated based on the benefits and the costs associated with it. So there's hopefully a lot of education that the consortium is going to do with the outreach and the webinars that we make available. Fi360 does webinars on a monthly basis, and we get great advisory attendance at those. What I will say is that in addition to what the consortium does, kind of from a collaborative perspective, I think there is still going to need to be a lot of one-on-one education with product providers and with advisors on this topic so that they can educate plan sponsors. We saw that after the Pension Protection Act with target date funds and managed accounts, where there was a lot of education that was required for advisors, and these offerings are even a bit more nuanced than what's out there today. So I do feel that education is going to be really critical in 2022 for us to focus on.
Yeah, educational is really, the cornerstone of increasing adoption, because people don't want to use something that they don't understand, and they need to be able to get their arms around it. So.
That's right. Yeah, they need to understand not only the vehicles and how they work so that they can, determine what's a good fit or not for a given plan. But we've also heard from the advisors that hold the Fi360 designations and use our software, a lot of concern around potential fiduciary liability. So educating folks on the Secure Act, on safe harbors, on how to implement, on how to document, so that you're not taking on undue risk as you're adding these capabilities to plans that you're managing.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes so much sense. We know that everybody in the space is really highly allergic to taking on risk and the possibility of lawsuits. And, this is always a concern, whether, it's for somebody acting as a fiduciary or for the sponsor who's also acting as fiduciary. But, like when they pass off that responsibility. So that makes a lot of sense. So tell me, among your current population of Fi360 advisors, what kind of appetite do you see for these income solutions?
I think there's going to be a good appetite. So our designees, our software users, they tend to be those advisors that act in a fiduciary capacity. So we have more advisors that are acting as a 321 and a 338 than those that are acting as a broker of record. And we've seen great adaptability over the last several years. As I mentioned, a lot more of them are expanding their services. So we've actually seen fee compression with asset managers in the last 10 years, but we have seen fees stay the same or actually increase for the advisors that work with Fi360. And they're staying the same or they're increasing because what they're doing is providing more services to the plans that they work with. So, I believe that there's going to be a really strong appetite from the Fi360 designees to explore these options, to understand the value proposition that they can bring to their plans by getting more active with them.
Oh, that's great. So, we've been out there talking to a lot of folks about the consortium and the work that we plan on doing. And one of the questions that we've gotten is around, whether this work really should be done by one of the trade organizations, and why is it that it's being embarked on by this collection of commercial enterprises?
I think that's a great question, and there are entities out there that are doing wonderful things for lifetime income. The Alliance for Lifetime Income, I'll point out, that's providing some great education. I think that having commercial entities like Cannex and FIS and Fi360 Broadridge get involved here is important, because we've got a unique perspective in terms of where those friction points are with adoption. And one thing that I didn't mention in my introduction is that in addition to being responsible for Fi360, I'm responsible for product at Matrix, which is the custodian that Broadridge owns. And I believe that the relationship that we've got directly with advisors, the knowledge that we have of how advisors work with software today to do investment selection for 401k plans and the like, puts us in a unique position to address things from a different perspective, and one where we're really focused on what the challenges are with commercialization. One of the things that's, again, very much a challenge with the uptake in lifetime income is the connections between the product providers and the record keepers and the custodians. So because we've got that knowledge, we've got those relationships through Broadridge, it does put us in a unique position relative to some of the education-only organizations that are trying to facilitate the uptake of lifetime income. So the fact that we can connect the dots in a very operational way, I think is unique, and I think is complementary to what others are doing. So we're absolutely not in competition with any of those entities, but we're maybe bringing things kind of that last mile home, hopefully, with the work that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that to some extent, this is almost like a subtle difference for some folks to really understand. But we're thinking so hard about the implementation for the purpose of actually making these solutions successful. And it's, that's truly our focus, sitting in the middle of the process. And I guess the other thing that we haven't made explicit is the fact that we're all third parties. We're not involved in the manufacturing of any solutions. We're not involved in the sale of the solutions. We're sort of sitting in the centerpiece, and I think that that's the right place to be for this.
I think that's a great point, and that's a great differentiation where you've got the providers who have historically tried to push these offerings out on their own. You've got these not-for-profit education-only organizations that have tried to evangelize for the concept in general, and we're a bit unique in that we're really focused on the commercialization, but from a product agnostic perspective. So we're evangelizing for the concept of lifetime income as opposed to focusing on any one product. So we're acting a bit as a hybrid, and hopefully that'll complement what others are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have no favorite children.
That's right.
So tell me, John, do you have any particular annuity pet peeves?
I think the one annuity pet peeve that I have is some of the misinformation out there. And there were some terrible selling practices in the 90s with annuities, and the fact that that's carried on for so long, and folks haven't gotten beyond that is a problem for me. And I'm not saying that there aren't bad products out there. There absolutely are. But I feel that they get a bad rap in general. And on the flip side of that, there are indexed funds that have been subject to fiduciary lawsuits and not come out on top in those lawsuits. So that's my biggest pet peeve, maybe, is the lack of equal representation or objective representation for that concept.
Yeah. So this is for your pet peeve, but I just want to add that, things have changed significantly in the annuity space as far as product design. Obviously, sales practices we always hope are improving, but there's really no purity test out there. Like there are bad practices with every type of individual in the marketplace. Like some people do bad things, right? And so I, there's no way of staying immune from that except for, the regulatory component, compliance, and then, product design. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's, it is about the process. It's about the fit of any given product with any given investor or any given plan. And that's what needs to be followed is a prudent process for evaluating options relative to the needs of clients. And I'm excited at the fact that we absolutely are evolving towards more of a fiduciary centric world, but we've got a ways to go.
Yeah, no, certainly. So tell me, what are you actually nostalgic about right now, though?
What I'm nostalgic about personally is, my family and the like. I had a milestone birthday last year. I turned 50. So I find myself reflecting a lot more on time when I was younger with the family. I'm also more nostalgic, I think, about my career, thinking about my early days working as a portfolio administrator for a large asset manager in Chicago. So I'm getting to that point, I think, of my life in general, where I'm reflecting on the last 20, 30, 40 years and doing that a bit more often than I have in the past.
So what is it that you miss about that earlier career work that you were doing?
I like the excitement, maybe the fact that I would get over my skis often. And I really do. I enjoy that. I enjoy taking on the new challenges. I think this consortium is a great example where it's really been a pleasure working with you, working with Michelle on it, not knowing how folks were going to respond to it, adapting as we go. So I look back on a handful of experiences that I've had during my career where I've taken on things that are very much a green space, and been successful sometimes and not successful other times, but that journey has been a very positive thing to experience. So that's what I'm excited about with the consortium.
That's great. So, brings you back to the old days of, feeling like you're challenging yourself. Let's hope that it is actually successful. And also that, we don't actually get too far over our skis. I don't want to, I don't want to tumble
Sure.
down.
Absolutely, yeah, and I believe that we are in a really solid place with the partners that we have and the common thinking that we have, and I'm confident that we're going to be successful. And then ultimately, I am very much focused on doing better for the world, doing better for plan participants. And I believe maybe one of the other points to make regarding why set up commercial entities as opposed to not-for-profit or education group to help further this cause. I believe that for Lifetime Income to really be successful, it has to be commercially viable. It has to be commercially viable for the providers. It has to be commercially viable for advisors. And I believe that the entities that have engaged are, in a great position to help make that happen. So that's something that I'm quite excited about, all the people that we're going to help as a result of the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. So tell me, what do you most look forward to?
I look forward to measured progress with anything. So I'm looking forward to seeing greater adoption of these lifetime income options based on the work that we're doing. And then personally, I like working on projects where I can see physical, kind of tangible changes and results from it. So I'm very much results oriented, and I get excited when I look and I see certain milestones being hit. So that's what drives me, and that's what I'm excited about.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to helping people better understand the space, as well as the work that we're doing together, because there will be different phases of it. But, we're just getting excited to kick off this year.
That's awesome. You've done a great job educating me so far, so I'm very appreciative for all that you've done to help guide me along, and I'm very excited to continue the partnership.
Thanks.